What's up, everyone? It's your boy Shaft, aka That Mill Guy, coming at you with another interview with another great Nami player here. And I said it in the last interview. I love using the word another, because that just means we got more Nami players succeeding, more Nami players doing well, and especially with the start of OPO7, I think, you know, at this point we've had our disbelief quelled. Like, we kind of know that Nami has what it takes to succeed, but I think a lot of people are still a little bit confused as to where to take things. And I think especially with our guest here, some of the decisions that he made in deck building are actually really interesting. I'm a big fan. It definitely made me put in a bit of a pre-order at the LGS for a little bit of testing. But anyway, I don't want to bury the lead too far. Introduce yourself. Who do we have on the podcast? I almost said the cast, so I'm not running a podcast. Who do we have on the interview here?
Hey, my name is Cisneros, and been playing Nami, I guess, I would say almost religiously since release OPO3.
Okay. And I mean, I joined Nami pretty late. Like, I like mid OPO5. So if you've been playing since OPO3, I got a lot of questions for you. You've been there from the dog days. You know, y'all were grinding. You were probably jamming Boodles and what's that, Bellmares and everything. Like, we'll talk about all that. You know, tell me about, you know, your history with it. You know, you stuck with it from OPO3, but was that really it? Like, did you give it up at a point and come back? Like how did you feel, especially with the red menace for 2 whole metas? You know, you were piping it through Whitebeard and everything. Like, how did you feel about Nami over the last couple sets?
I mean, honestly, I didn't think I was gonna like the deck at all when it first came out. I remember like bashing my friends, like bringing it up. I was like, I just couldn't think, or I didn't think that the deck could ever be fast enough, given the games. But turns out, little by little, it always had what it needed. During the initial formats where it was a lot of red, I felt like the only really bad matchup was Red Green Law. I think that one, you saw that guy across your table and you're like, all right, we got to go next. There's no chance. But it's funny enough that I say that. But I think I played in maybe 2 Treasure Cups or something. It was like the 2 Gen Con events and then a regional after that. I played against 4 Red Green Law players. And I actually didn't lose, so I don't know.
All right, casual flex. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's just a joke. It's really a big joke in my testing group that should be the case. But when it comes to events, I think it's maybe just matchup knowledge. I don't think people actually want to spend the time to test against Nami. So maybe at these big events, you know, you get to these senior players who just didn't respect it enough, and it can get you there sometimes. So. But despite that, like against Zoro, everyone kept saying Zoro was unfavorable, but I thought it was very favorable
early on,
and
especially.
Against Whitebeard, and then against Whitebeard, you could play Soga King, and at least up until OP, like a little bit into OP4, he kind of lost value. But during that OP3 format, definitely, that's definitely what you needed to have in your deck to have a chance against Whitebeard. The deck was slow enough that, or I guess if you could bounce your cards enough, it's slow enough where you can cycle out. So actually very much enjoyed the deck. And if I took any pauses, I actually only took 1 pause from the deck, which was the really short, I guess, like EB, like what is it, like 6.5 format, whatever that EB 1.5 format, just like that 2-3 weeks. I thought that was the only time the deck was unplayable. Like RP Law and Gecko.
Was that like just
the way that they were constructing?
Was that Black White Luffy? Is that like, that's pretty much what it was, right? Like EB brought in Black White Luffy. Is that what you're talking about, or?
No. I'm talking about the Sokka Ben.
Like the kind of around there. Okay.
Yeah, literally just like there was like three events or whatever. And I think it started off with Mesquite or Peoria. I don't remember. It was one event in between. I went to one of them and I decided that the Nami deck wasn't playable. But
fair enough.
Other than that, I feel like it's always had a chance, and especially now the meta is more diverse. And I think the new cards, the new Amazon cards, make it so that RP Law isn't a 99 to 1 matchup anymore. Now I think it's more probably like 70-30, and even though that's bad, I'll still take
much better than 99-1. Yeah, much better than that. Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about your tournament experience. Like, we're kind of looking at the notes here. You don't just play One Piece. You play a ton of TCGs and you do really well in them. I think that's a bit of an understatement. So
I'm okay. I don't know.
Don't undersell yourself here.
I think the only game I would say like side game that I felt like I did really well in was in Force of Will.
Yeah.
I think that game should have had a longer lifespan than it did, but I guess that's why I think I'm doing well in One Piece. It had like a similar game mechanics where you have like a Dawn deck that's separate from your main deck, so like you can really focus on deck construction and don't really have to worry about like having these bricks in your deck for the most part to let you play the game. So yeah, that I grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm always gonna love Yu-Gi-Oh, and I just wish it had better price support. I think that's the main reason I don't really play it as much. But from a gameplay perspective, it just has the most player. What's the word? Not really player, but player expression. Yeah, I guess.
Oh, like I guess skill expression, or like you're saying in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, because there's just so many. There's so many options. I feel like you have a great game when you can think of like, oh, the first two sets that ever came out, and people can always find like a random tech card that is going to be relevant for the current meta game. And I think when you have the option to do that, and it really becomes like a detective work, it makes it fun when you deck build and just later on down the line when they make new cards and trying to figure out all these old synergies. So I will always have respect for Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hope that I hope that they just change and make it more rewarding for players to be a part of. I did play Dragon Ball Masters for a while.
Yep,
like
seen that as well.
Like set 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think up until set 7, had like a regional top and a few like 3v3s or whatever. But I think that game also was good. But I'll talk about it more later. You had some great points about if Nami is good for the game, and it comes to like control decks or like control decks or just mid-range decks in any card game. But I felt like Masters fell to a fault of just becoming, who can play their biggest boss monster, a race to their biggest boss monster.
Right.
And so I kind of had a falling out after that. But after that, I kind of dabbled in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then when One Piece came out, I fell in love. I actually didn't watch the anime at all up until like I heard about the release of the game. And then my friends got me to watch One Piece afterwards, and it just makes me appreciate the game even more.
Yeah.
And even though I play Nami avidly, I do play like other decks, and this game is just fun. And other than I think most people would argue when it comes to like Black Mirrors, like it's just a Gecko battle, or when you're playing a Yellow Mirror, then it's kind of like whoever plays a bigger guy, like or more bigger guys. But aside from those like very few caveats, I think the game has like a lot of room for interaction, and I'm excited for like the future of the game.
Perfect. There's so many points on there that I want to retouch on closer to the end of the video. So for those of you that are this far in the video, I mean, I'm definitely going to touch on price support, design, and like a few thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh! As a non-Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, as someone who's been playing Magic for over 10 years, coming into One Piece, it was a bit of a big shift for me. So many points that I want to retouch on. But as someone who's so experienced with different TCGs and ones that are very similar, especially being in the realm of Bandai and their design and their philosophies with the game, I think, you offer what I would say is not just a unique perspective of someone that maybe also just came from Yu-Gi-Oh! To One Piece, but also someone who's had experience actually playing these games. I think too many people have played similar games and they're like, I play One Piece, I have this opinion, but you've actually succeeded in all of these games. So I like to hold a little bit more weight to your opinion in some of these discussions. So I'm happy to have you on here for that. But when it comes to winning, I think we should get right into it with the tournament. So you recently had a bit of a great placing. I think, again, underselling it here. I'm gonna let you sell it, but you recently did pretty well. So talk to me about the tournament. Talk to me about how you placed, and just how you felt about going into it with Nami in general. We'll kind of touch on matchups and deck lists here, but just talk to me about the tournament in general.
I just came off a win off the CoreTCG store regional. I think it is an achievement because it is a conglomerate of good players that wanted to get into these events. But I still do kind of treat it as like a really like important locals. And it's still good testing. I think I'm very lucky for the amount of just good players in the area, and the amount of competition just a store regional brings, because people are traveling. I know I saw people from like Arizona come by. I'm not sure how far other people had come, but I know at least I saw a few people from Arizona like fly and drive down.
Right.
So the competition's there, and I got lucky. I wasn't in the event to begin with. I got waitlisted, so that was like the first victory of the day. And then
it's written in the stars. It's written in the stars.
Yeah. And after that, let me see my matchups. I think I had two back-to-back Luchis to start off the tournament, into a Black Yellow Luffy.
Yes.
And then RP Law round 4, and then Enel round 5, and then the final was against Corona.
Okay, perfect.
I think by far my first round was pretty difficult. I would say I was actually really surprised to see that a Luchi player was playing more than like 2 copies of 6 Cost Brook. He played 4 copies, and he also played Rebecca to add back 6 Cost Brook.
No!
And like did that.
How did you win this? How did you win this?
I think it sounds like a ridiculous number for them to put 12 cards back into your deck.
It is.
But if you look at, but you also have to think about like what the rest of their turns look like, because they're spending 6 Dawn, 10 Dawn to put 3 cards in my deck. So oftentimes that meant they put the 3 cards, 6, or like set up for another Brook the next turn, but they didn't attack, or they like, because I have like 3 or 4 Dawn open, they would only swing with like their biggest guy, so that's 1 attack. So that's maybe like 2 or 3 cards out of your hand, sometimes even less if you have like White Snake or just other like bounce events. So yeah, they get to put 12 cards back in your deck, but they like I get to choose those cards, and so
that's actually really fair. Yeah. That's actually really fair. I haven't played enough against the card. I just know it bottoms X3, but I always forget that you get to choose. Like it's not the opponent gets to choose, so you can still set up your bottom deck as you want. Okay, all right, that is a point I actually forgot. Keep going.
Yeah, I think something important about I guess once you see them mill or you see them play 6 Cost Brook, if you end up getting the 1-drop searcher, you kind of just hold it. You're like forced to hold it, so that when they play Brook, you can push your stack enough in a way where you know you're gonna mill and set up to get to those 3 cards that are going to be, or like 3 or more cards. And that's where I think it gets difficult with the deck, like remembering your bottom stack, remembering like what your opponent is doing to manipulate that, and setting up for that as best you can. So that was my round 1. That was like a pretty good way to start the morning, I guess. You really got to get the brain flowing, so make sure you didn't just like lose round 1. Yeah. And then round 2 and round 3 went by pretty fast. Nothing really notable.
What do you think about Black White Luffy now? I know kind of last meta in 06, a big thing that a lot of Nami players were doing were kind of 3 to 4, like almost a play set of Gravity Blade. That was just kind of a big thing coming in, because it was a really good piece of removal. And it definitely was one that really like shut down the Black White Luffy matchup, in my opinion anyway. So what did you think about Black White Luffy with this version of Nami right now?
Yeah, you're right about Gravity Blade. It also helped against RP Law to give you a little bit of a better chance. Honestly, if you ever triggered it, that was like the craziest thing you could do, because that's insane.
Yeah.
But this current meta, I feel like the deck doesn't need it anymore. You have enough things where you can like just having the Amazon package to help cycle like so much, and the fact that it's a 3 cost blocker is really important. I'm talking about the Amazon blocker, but having that tool in the deck now makes it so it doesn't really matter how many bodies they stick anymore. It's really just a race, and I think the Nami deck is more consistent than the Black Yellow Luffy deck, especially since you're not hitting them. And at the end of the day, they have to invest Dawn or part of their combo to remove the blocker with like Rocket Luffy if they have it, or like you have like there's a lot of things that have to go their way. And even if they do have it, they're using excess Dawn to not be as aggressive. And I think, being able to like force your opponents to like have to do things like that gives the deck enough time where you like don't miss Gravity Blade at all to have that extra like turn or two. Now you actually have these bodies that do them for you. They cycle through your deck, and it just helps the matchup. The deck. Like I will say that Black Yellow Luffy is a lot better now because of what they have in 07 as well. So they can draw really fast. I mean, but that's like against any deck. Like if they if they can go to 0 and like combo on their 6-Dawn, their 7-Dawn turn, that's like pretty lethal against every deck, not just Nami. So yeah, if they have it, it happens. Those games happen. But then, I mean, like at least for Nami, you can sometimes trigger your way out. So I think it's a give and take, but I would still say it's favorable for Nami.
Yeah.
And then against RP Law,
that's the big one. This is gonna be the big one. Yeah.
I sat down. I'm like, all right, I guess this is my loss for the tournament. I just want to try to get my invite, so I'll win the next two. The Amazon cards and being able to yet again just have multiple bodies that cycle, and them not being able to remove all of them in one turn really helps. And I had 3 triggers in my life, so like that definitely meant that I was going to win the game. But aside from that, I guess once that happened, we saw the 3rd draw trigger, and I had like 12 cards in my hand and like maybe 20 cards in my deck. It didn't matter like how aggressive they could be. I had way too many cards.
Like, wait, no, like 10 plus cards with 20 cards left. That's insane. Like you're pretty much holding a giant bazooka and you're looking at them. You're like, I dare you. Do it now. Right? Like.
Yeah. So, but like as soon as that happened and I saw that there wasn't any other RP Law players left in contention as undefeated, I really felt that I was going to win the tournament. And like the only way you ever lose, I think my matchup spread would have been, Enel, I think it was Enel, Lucci, Perona. Those were the 3 matchups left that I could have played into round 5 and round 6, and all those are very favorable. So I think the only way I could lose was if I bricked, and I didn't. So I got there.
I think NL, the only way, like NL was your second last matchup. I think NL, the only angle they really have is without the Ohm Holly Ohm Holly combo, where they can get like aggressive kind of really early on. Which they don't really play anymore. I think the only thing they can really do is just not swing and go like NL into Yamato, and then like just start alpha swinging at you with like 11Ks or something. I think that's the only angle NL really has against you. But even now, like with the Kuja Apis package, like you're so proactive, because before like you really relied on your opponents attacking you. Now it's just like, all right, you're not going to attack. Okay, sure. I'll just keep drawing cards. I'll just keep going through my deck. But what was your experience with the NL matchup?
I think it's I would say 100-0, but there's always a chance you break. So I think it's a 99-1 in favor of Nami. And it's like I cannot, I guess, reiterate how important this draw blocker is. But getting to hold that card, like you want to hold it in that matchup until the end of the game. So whether like regardless of what they try to do to you, whether they like choose not to attack, or they choose to attack, if you hold it and like play multiple like back-to-back turns, it doesn't matter if they play Yamato. That means if they're playing Yamato pop one blocker, you're gonna have another one, and that means their swings are still gonna be low.
Like a lot lower. Yeah, that's 9 dot. Yeah, that's a lot of resources. Yeah,
and regardless, and even if they do want to try alpha swinging you, and now you have 2 blockers and they run out of ways to like remove them, a lot of them don't play Amaru anymore, or I guess you can't afford to play Amaru. And even if they did play Amaru, that means they also have to hope they open up like Flampe to rip their life like multiple times.
Yeah.
So like just having this presence of a blocker that they can't deal with other than attacking, it makes that matchup even like more unwinnable for them. It's they really have like no outs. I feel like the only real time I think the deck has a chance is if they play multiple 7-cost NLs. If you just go 7/7/7/7/7, and then that's a little scary because now they got rushers. But I feel like they don't play that many anymore. If anything, it's like a 2 of, sometimes 3 of, and if they don't play multiple back-to-back turns, then it doesn't really matter.
How do you feel about? I mean, I know classically yellow has been pretty good, so I think like a lot of people didn't expect too much from NL. I think like after reject ban and categories out of the metagame, like I think we still expected the yellow matchup not to change too much. And I mean, without like the Ohm Holly combo going on in the deck, like it really was only upside for us. How do you feel about the Perona matchup? I would like to think, being in colors that I would argue are probably pretty frustrating to play against. You have black's removal, you have green's ability to potentially restand, and honestly, like you have some potential like nonsense at the top end with green, like Zoro that they could bring it against you. I'm not sure if you saw anything like that, but let me know how was that last match to kind of win you the tournament.
Honestly, I think Perona is a breeze, other than if they play Zoro. And even if they do play Zoro, I think Nami has to draw really slow in order for Zoro to close out the game. I will say Perona is the harder of the green matchups, other than like Bonnie and Kid Leader, because just the threats that they pose. I think overall, I think maybe yellow green Yamato is probably the better of all the green decks against Nami, because they can play. I've seen people play Zoro, but for the most part, it's like the threat of Hody and I guess a double strike leader.
Yeah, Yamato is pretty much like, if you Hody on curve, I think like 2 Hodys on curve back to back are like pretty backbreaking. I think that's probably like the power that Yamato presents. But yeah.
Yeah, the resting your Dawn is crazy. So I think that's what gives Perona, I guess, like a similar feel. Like it's kind of like one of the better of the green decks against Nami, only if they have Zoro. But I guess having triple rester like with leader and Hody can, like, I mean, they can ignore your blockers, and then always when someone rests your Dawn, it can get pretty annoying. So you have to plan for it.
Yeah.
But okay. I don't think my opponent played Zoro in this deck list, or if he did, he didn't draw it. And
right.
I don't think it really mattered. I drew really well. I drew like all 4 of my Kayas. I drew multiple blockers.
Yeah.
That guy was not meant to win.
Yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes you got it. Sometimes you got it. You know, like it's what it's gonna be. So that's good to hear. So the tournament went really well. It looks like, I mean, especially for that first round sounds absolutely like a nightmare. I might have mentally clocked out after seeing like 4 Brooks, but it's really good. So you got there. How was that prep going into that tournament? And once we talk about that, I do want to talk about kind of long term, like what like going through that tournament. It wasn't just what your prep is pre-tournament, but what were you doing to keep yourself into it kind of the whole tournament? I think a lot of people underestimate the mental fortitude it takes to play Nami round after round after round. So talk to me a little bit about that.
I think the prep that I took into was just playtesting with my friends and going to locals. I don't think there's anything that can replace playing in person. I think it's so important to be able to like take back plays or just like talk about different lines of play on both sides. I think the important thing about playing Nami is it's actually understanding everyone else's deck. You really need to spend time understanding the metagame, understanding other people's tech choices, what the other colors could play. Because at the end of the day, you need to manage your Dawn like very optimally every turn to counteract whatever you think your opponent can do. Yep. And so that takes a lot more studying. And I think it honestly helps like understand One Piece as a whole, because you're forced to do things like that. And it could help like if the time comes to switch to another deck, or if you feel like you want to try another deck, already having some prior knowledge about like deck goals or what others' deck designs already are really helps a lot. And so pre-tournament, that's kind of normally what my testing group is. We all like play similarly in that aspect, where we'll make a few plays. We'll decide like, oh, we don't really like how this turn went, so we'll go back and we'll try a different line. And we'll try different types of attacks. Okay, we have to think about like, oh, what are the counter options Nami has open based on their Dawn? What are the goals for like certain turns? Because sometimes it's not to take damage. Sometimes it's to get hand size down. Sometimes it's to build board. And when you build board, you don't really want to attack. So Nami can't like cycle or filter enough.
Right.
So just understanding those things and like having a better understanding of everyone else's goals really helps, or really helped overall, and always helps when it comes to like tournament prep.
Right.
And then during the tournament, I would say it's just enjoy the community. I think you want to focus on your rounds, but also enjoy your time being there. I think like being in positive spirits, regardless if you win or lose a round. I think you want to just be with like your friends, whoever you traveled with. Talk about the game, talk about decisions. I guess like the playtesting doesn't stop even at the tournament. If you ever have questions about a turn, sometimes like people will take pictures of their hand or certain board state so they can come back and talk about it like in between the rounds and be like, oh, what do you think I should have done here? Do you think this was good? This is what I ended up doing. And just talking about like a lot of talking points like that. Because at the end of the day, like you're probably not going to see every board state and just like play testing. And so being able to talk about these things constantly and having them as just a backlog in your memory about like, oh, this is kind of what I should consider if it ever comes up again. It's always going to be important.
Yeah, and I think what you're kind of alluding to there is really valuable too, in the sense that, you know, like especially when it comes to Nami, you can play it perfectly and still lose the game, because there are large aspects of the deck that do rely on things like the triggers and kind of what, like, it's a deck that largely deals with randomness a lot more than other decks. Like sometimes you play your Gavels and you mill over 2 Impel Down All-Stars, and sometimes you mill over 2 Pilafs. So, you know, things can really be different state to state. But I think it's important to also understand, as you mentioned, like how, you know, maybe playing a Snake Dance versus playing a Love Mellow could have changed the game. You know, was it more worth it to bounce the Kaya, or was it more worth it to draw a card, or like small things like that can really like change game states. And so I think it is important to like review things. And also, I think especially with Nami, not to get too stuck up in the details. I think a lot of people, like, they can, you know, when it comes to min-maxing everything, like at some point you just have to accept, in my opinion at least, that your opponent just had it. And I think just maybe like bogging yourself down with the details can be a little bit like frustrating. So really just look at your gameplay and say, okay, was there a mistake here? Maybe I played a Pilaf when I shouldn't have, or, you know, maybe I was too aggressive this turn and I shouldn't have been. Stick to those details and not the minutia of like, okay, you know, I did this on turn 5 and then to turn 7 I did, like, you know, just don't get too stuck up on it. That's what practice is for, especially in between rounds. I think my advice has always been to folks, like, if you're in the tournament, don't confuse yourself. That's for practice. If you're in the tournament, don't add too many details. Like you're gonna overthink the next round. You know, maybe try and take 1 or 2 things out of the last game you had, win or lose, see if you can apply it. That's the best you can do. You can't change up your game. And I say that as a fighting game player with all these sticks behind me. Like, you go round and round, like rounds are like, you know, in fighting games, rounds are like 60 seconds. Right? Like, the max you can do is think about 1 to 2 things you can do to improve in the next round. Like, maybe my opponent started jumping too much. That's it. That's all you can think about and try and apply something. The same thing works with card games. Just focus on one thing and move it to the next. So that's what I like that you're kind of highlighting there. But when it came to prep, not only is it about tournament prep, but it's also about deck lists. How did you come to this deck list in OP07? What made you drop the Deathwings? What made you drop the Buggy package? What made you not play Sengoku? Talk to me about it. Where did this list come from?
I definitely did try the Navy package. I really felt like because Gravity Blade was such a strong card in the EB1 format, and with all these new Navy cards, I was really trying to think about if there was enough of them that would make it worth playing, not just for Gravity Blade, because I mean, being able, like, having Sengoku to search Gravity Blade and White Snake seems pretty good.
Can Sengoku grab Gravity Blade or no, the other one cost can.
It's Tashigi. Navy,
yeah. There you go. Tashigi.
I'm confusing the searchers. Never mind. So I would never 7 Warlords. 7 Warlords is not going to be the deck. But yeah, you're right about it should have been the other one drop. Tashigi.
Wait. Okay, wait. That's kind of. I want to come back to that. Wait. So some people would think that's a little controversial. Wait. So why especially with like Overheat, Spada, and Love Mellow being searchable by Sengoku, you brushed it off really quick. Why did you not think Sengoku was worth it?
I just didn't feel like Overheat and the other, like, I guess it's mainly Overheat. I guess it's not worth it, especially when you compare it to Snake Dance. I really do feel like that's just a power creep of the card. It's just the applications of the card. Even the trigger is just way different and way better.
Miles better.
So. Yes. And just thinking about how the metagame has evolved, and I felt like Gravity Blade, even toward the end of the EB1 format, I was already feeling that it was more of a bait to have in your deck. It seems really good, but like I said earlier, the best application for it was when it was a trigger. I think spending 7 Dawn was just not beneficial for the deck. There were so many other things you could do, especially when it comes to preserving life. Because I think the most often time that you would want to play a Gravity Blade would probably be on your 7 or 8 Dawn turn. But against, I guess, RP Law, or I guess specifically that deck, the deck can build boards like really easily, and it's just not worth the Dawn investment. And like Gravity Blade did have its like really good uses against like I think Gecko and Sokka or just like other mid range decks. So that's where I think the deck or Gravity Blade really shined. But the matchup that you wanted it to be really good in, which was RP Law, it just wasn't worth it. So taking that thinking into OP7 is what made me brush off the new Navy cards.
Yeah.
And really put me to look at the Kuja Pirate cards. And I kind of took it with the same philosophy in deck building in terms of the Impel Down package. I really have to thank my testing group for like just helping me delve into these ideas. I don't know if you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of Nicky Goldman. He's like just plays, like he played Red Green Law like religiously, and I mean he's just good at the game.
Yeah.
And I mean he's continuing to find success in the continuing metas, and he's actually a Nami player at heart. He has spent so much time with me in making the deck. So as much as he may be having success with all these other meta decks, I think he could also easily find success with Nami, but he's choosing to play these other decks because overall he just likes the matchup spreads a little bit more. Or he has his own reasoning for not choosing, but
play style
he does respect
preference.
Nami. He does respect Nami, and we spend a lot of time in deck building and thinking about it and crafting it. And so, in talking about it with him, just having, I can't keep stopping bringing up this name, but the Kuja Pirate blocker, I think it's Amazon Lily.
Margaret,
it's Amazon Lily, but her name's Margaret. Yep. That card it does so much. You would think just a blocker that draws is not that good, but it's the right cost against like black, where they have to invest a minuser. In order to get rid of it before they even get to attack, or if they attack with Lucci, then you get a free block, and it did its job.
Especially with Lucci being like especially recently like the black deck of choice. It's nice how it's uniquely positioned against Lucci. And so like looking at all these cards, and so going back to comparing it to the Impel Down package, I think ideally, at least when we come to deck building, we want minimum 15 to 16 search targets, so that your searcher doesn't whiff. And we're just analyzing all the cards, and the fact that it synergizes so well with Love, which is already 4 of in the deck. The only like bad card I think would be the 2K counter. But like in previous lists, I was playing Oppies as like just to have a consistent like other filter. But now that there's less East Blue cards that you want to search for, because the deck doesn't play Zeph, and you actually don't need Zeph anymore. I think Zeph was like the win condition against yellow decks, but now that because the Amazon package is so fast, you basically replace the Zeph. And so just like looking at those cards and like just having a really easy 16 cards to look at is what made it better than the Impel Down package. But we don't forget about Jazz Bones. He's still Impel Down, and that card is I think will forever be a staple, or should be a staple in any Nami deck, like a minimum 2, because you really want to see Gabble, as many Gabbles as you can in a lot of matchups. So it does help facilitate with just the randomness of the deck, and in case you do mill, you want as many options as you can, and it is one of the best options for the deck. It has counter. I think that's something that's really important and undervalued in like the 2K counter for the Amazon package, is that you want to have these free counters to help reduce hand size, or just be able to like tap out on certain turns, so that you can have defense without taking, like, just have enough defense so you know you're not going to take more than the appropriate amount of damage, because there are times where you really need to think like, I'm gonna dump my hand to play like searcher or blocker, or just like tap out to play multiple Kayas, blocker, whatever. Just so, because having one Dawn open isn't going to really change the game, and I'd rather you want to invest Dawn earlier in the game as much as you can, so that when it comes to the end of the game, you're not stuck on these choices of I can't play a peel off and a blocker. I can't play 2 blockers this turn because I need more than 4 Dawn. Like getting the heavier Dawn investment out earlier in the game is really important, so that
you can be more flexible with your defense at the end of the game, which is going to be the more important crucial turns for the deck.
Yeah. And I think like searchable 2Ks has been something that I think a lot of Nami players have forgotten or may not have ever come across the value of. Like, Nami operates at such a unique angle. It teaches you very niche things about the game. It doesn't really teach you the whole game. But searchable 2K comes, especially in yours, you're making the decision to play the searchable 2K counter. I genuinely don't know the name of it. I know it's a searchable 2K counter. I understand why you're playing it. I just don't know the name of it at all. It's some type of, I think it's like a 2 or 3 cost or something like that.
Yeah, it's a 3 cost, and I know it has Boa in the name. I actually don't know the name of it either.
Yeah. Does it have like an on play that I think it has text. It's not like a generic.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's going to come up in this metagame, but it might come up in future ones, or maybe if Zoro becomes popular, it could be. The on play is if you have 2 total Amazon cards, then you can return it 3 or less. Only your opponents. You can return an opponent's 3 or less to their hand. So
does it count itself? Is it 2 or more other? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you could have Gloriosa. You could have Gloriosa pop that, and oh no, Gloriosa's not Amazon Lily. Gloriosa's just Kuja.
Yeah, I might say Kuja and Amazon Lily. I'm pretty sure since Gloriosa also has both names in the text. Yeah. Counting itself
probably makes it playable. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I was like, right now, what are you bouncing with? Like Pero Sparrows, or like, what are you bouncing with? But okay, yeah. But I think the question here is that based on what a lot of lists are going with right now, following suit with Ramton and everything, the EU Nami player. So I get the whole Daz Bones thing. I've been on 0 myself, but if someone was to play 2, I can't even fault them. Returning Gavel is really powerful. Completely fine. I think the big question is that you aren't playing Perfume Femur, because you're not playing Apis. I think that's like the big thing. You're not playing Apis and you're not playing Perfume Femur, at least in this list. So I'm not sure if you've seen the list that have played those. Have you seen the list that played both of those as a playset, or?
Yeah, I have. And it's just not worth it. I think like the cards that you have to cut in order to fit those in really hurt consistency, and like having not like Oppi's not being searchable is what really hurts. And like you're basically committing to adding a brick to your hand, but now you have to hard draw an Oppi's, and then you also have to hope you hit the search, because now you're playing like less search targets. I think those decks play like 12 only, like 12 targets, maybe 12 or 13.
Kaya, so it's Kaya, Pilaf, Rubber Band, Gavel. So 16. Yeah, 16. Yeah. Kaya, Pilaf, Rubber Band, Gavel. And actually Apis itself. If you play Apis, there's more. Yeah, so technically if you play the Apis, it's around 19 targets. At the maximum, if you were to play Apis, you'd have 19 potential targets, because Apis can search.
I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about for Gloriosa. I think there's always going to be enough targets for Oppi's. Yeah, because Oppi's can search itself, which is like always I think what made the card really good. I mean, that has a high cost, so it really would have sucked if it couldn't search itself. But yeah, I was more so on Gloriosa, and I think not playing 4 is a mistake for that card. I think you really want to be able to manipulate the bottom of your deck. Even if you having 16 targets, or even if you just play 12 targets, I think not having the 4 searchers is really crucial, because at the end of the game, like against Black, or against RP Law, and they're shoving cards back into the bottom of your deck, you really want to be able to have the option of pushing those cards up, so that you can see them, or just get the bad cards out of the way a little bit faster. I think that's just my take on it. I think it's not worth having more bricks in your deck for the Perfume, and even though it has a draw trigger, you really don't want that as a draw trigger. Like if I saw my 2K counter, or if I saw a Gloriosa in life instead of that card, I would be much happier.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, you can't knock it. You won with it, right? So what I will say to everyone listening, it's very the list runs very similar to the package that's already working with the Kuja Apis thing, right? The concept's just a little bit different. You change your play style a little bit for those of you that are playing it. You have a little bit more consistency with the Mr. 1 because you're playing 2. You have the 2K counter, which is great, because that's a lot of times that's what Apis ends up being, because it's not like all the time you get to play it and dig for a card like that. So at the end of the day, you still have synergies You still have very much the same synergies. You lose a trigger for what I would argue is you lose draw triggers for like Mr. Ones and some more consistency. So it can be seen as kind of a similar situation, but you do have to orient your playstyle to it. I think this is what people were saying with, like, I remember when people were like very like into the Deathwing thing. They're into there's still people forcing for Deathwings because they refuse to change, which is fine. I guess that's a playstyle thing, but you won't be beating RP Law with 4 Deathwings. It's a bit too high of a Dawn investment. Until let's see what happens in August. If RP Law gets banned, maybe I'll go back to 4 Deathwings, but I'm not beating RP Law with 4 Deathwings. If you are, you're not doing it consistently or you're lying. That's my statement. But yeah, so
I would agree.
when it comes to kind of building the deck, how did you see, like, do you see certain cards returning? Like, do you feel like, we've had like a deck list for so long, Zeph's, Impel Down, Deathwings, blah, blah, blah. We made some changes. We'd play like Gravity Blade. Some people would play Nojikos instead of Brickfist. Like it stayed the same for so long. Do you see this as a temporary evolution, or do you feel like it can return back to Buggy's Impel Down package? Why do you think like the Kuja Pirates Apis build is good right now? Is it good just because it's proactive, or do you feel like the metagame kind of calls for it?
I think the metagame calls for it. I think because the overall format is slower, like the value of a blocker, the value of a searchable bounce card goes up.
Okay.
I could see if the deck, if the game becomes a faster meta, then I think that's where the Impel Down package is better. Having searchable Brickfist and I think, like, I guess if you do play that engine again, then I think Zeph would come back, because now you have something that bounces their board and your board, and it's another lethal option. So I think it's just the shifts in the meta. The meta's a little bit slower, so these high value cards get you there.
Yeah. No. I think that's really good to kind of highlight there, because I think a lot of people miss it. Everyone's always looking to, they bought their Buggy alt arts and they don't want to just keep them in their binder kind of sitting there all the time, right? But I know my Zeph alt arts will come back one day. So I'm happy to hear it. Let's talk about some, we kind of broke down the list a little bit. Let's talk about some matchups, right? So there's a big spread right now. I think I want to go over maybe a couple, and then I'll leave it to you to kind of add where you need to. The big question right now, what are your big tips versus RP Law? I feel like that's what's on everyone's mind right now. Nami's worst matchup, and unfortunately, it's what everyone is playing right now, but it arguably is the best deck in 08 by a mile. So obviously there's a lot more eyes on it in 07 because of it. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think the key thing about the matchup now is that now that you have more playable bodies, you have to value them on a turn where you're going to play more than one down. Like if you can't play 2 bodies a turn for 3 turns in a row, then you really have to think about what you're going to have to sacrifice, or how much down you're keeping open, because you really need to get value out of every card that you're playing. You really need to get a Snake Dance to get something important back. So you either need to play like 2 Kaya's down a turn, you need to play 2 blockers down in 1 turn, and like have enough Dawn to get value out of these cards to return them back to your hand. Otherwise, you're gonna run out of cards too fast. Their Law is always gonna do what they're gonna do. They're gonna build board. They're gonna keep swinging. Especially in like the turns that you think they're gonna play multiple rushers, or you can check if they're gonna play multiple rushers by like tapping out on a certain turn. Then on that turn is that you want to, I guess in those turns you need to filter for. That's where having the searchable 2K is important. Keeping these free counter cards in your hand, because you need to invest Dawn really heavily early, so that when it comes to when you're at 1 life and they have 5 guys on the board and 2 of them are maybe kid killers, that now you have the Dawn available.
But quick aside, I hate that card. Kid and Killer. Kid and Killer can die in a hole somewhere. That and a 4-cost Reiju. But sorry, go on. I need to put that in there. I hate those 2 cards.
Yeah. But yeah, like forcing them to have to play over something on their board in order to bottom deck something before they can attack is very important, especially if you. But yeah, and like really the only way you're going to do that is you have two Kayas or like a blocker and a Kaya. But making them waste 3 Dawn is so important. You really need to lower their Dawn count and how wide they get to swing. And at the end of the day, you do need draw triggers to help you. I think without at least 2, you're not winning the matchup. They can draw really slow. They could like never draw a Kid Killer, and then that also gives you enough time. But if they see 1 or 2, especially if they see 2, then it's really hard without some draw triggers to get you out. So it's about you want to build board at the like in the middle of the game where your cards are you're always going to get something bottom decked. You have to live with it. But you want to make sure that at least every turn you can bounce back something. So saving the searchers for those turns, saving your Kaias for those turns, unless you're absolutely bricked and you need to find something. That's the only time you should ever consider sacrificing your 1 playable card. But you really need to you need to really value multiple bodies and being able to cycle them.
Yeah. And I'm happy, like the advice for all the viewers right now, like the advice that we're getting for RP Law is really consistent, just kind of playing out multiple bodies a turn. And from a sequencing perspective, or like, I guess like a vacuum board state perspective, like you have X amount of cards in your hand, let's say 3 of them are, 3 of them are Snake Dance. And so the way to, 3 of them are characters, 1 of them is Snake Dance. And you can think about the sequencing where you play 2 of them. This is a world where we don't have a Dawn restriction. You play 2 of them. RP Law bottom decks 1. You have Snake Dance for the other one. That way, at a base level, next turn you still have that 1 character left in your hand plus the 1 you bounce with Snake Dance, and you can do it again. And so and then your hand starts to evolve from there. So that's the type of thing you want to think about, getting that type of value. And that way, they can maybe hone in and bottom deck the Margaret because they want to get past your blocker. They can hone in bottom deck the Kaya because they don't want you to bounce that with the Snake Dance. But then all of a sudden, your Gloriosa is left over for the Snake Dance. And then you play your Gloriosa, you grab a card, and then you're pushing the card they bottom deck back up, right? So you can start to see how like this type of sequencing really works, because it is in their favor to get rid of Margaret. So they really want to get rid of that because they need to attack through. And then it's also in their favor to bottom deck the Kaya, because Lord knows they let the Kaya go off a Snake Dance. That's just free value. Right? Like then you're playing the Kaya again, you're going even farther. They need to bottom deck those. And that means a lot of times the Searcher's left over. You play the Searcher for a second time, you push those cards back up. So again, really highlighting like the consistent the advice that we're getting from all these interviews that I'm doing, all these people talking about multiple characters a turn, and understanding that unless you're desperate, just keep them in your hand. Don't. Also, my small gripe, the fact that they designed RP Law's ability to go off without there being an actual target, I think is really stupid, but we'll get that. We'll talk about that in the design section later, if we have some time. Talk to me about the NL matchup. You're already highlighting this feels like a really easy matchup to you. Is there something that you should really be paying attention to other than it's yellow, play like it's yellow? What's something in the NL matchup that you feel like should be held on to?
For the most part, I think you want to save your blockers toward the end of the game. I wouldn't shove them on. You don't want to play them early. You don't want to give them early Gadatsu value. At least on that card. Like if they want to Gadatsu your Searcher, sure, whatever, that's fine. But
just laugh toward at that point,
yeah, toward the 7, there's 7, 9, 10 Dawn turn. That's when you really want to my friends say this a lot. You want to put them in a pickle. You want to play blocker Kaya. So now like they're like that deck has no way to push damage, like to push through, push damage if you have blockers. So now but they also know you have Snake Dance. So it's like it's a lose for them. They're not gonna be able to push damage, or you get to bounce back your Kaya, and cycle through faster. So I think because that deck has very limited options, that's how you win. That's how you solidify that matchup. Like you're really going to give them 0 chance by doing that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And again, because they are choosing to play a lot less of the aggression, going into this, kind of wide open 07 meta, I would say. I would say the meta is relatively wide open. I think a lot of people are making metagame decisions based on 08 decisions. But based on that, the NL deck has become I think a lot easier as well than 06. How do you feel about the I kind of want to lump these together. Moria and Lucci, they play different, but Black. How do you feel about Black in 07 and Nami versus? Or do you feel like they're so different that they should be categorized differently? But let me know.
No, I think the only really big difference between the Gecko and the Lucci matchup is that you really value White Snake against Gecko. I think that's the only difference. You don't really get that much value against Lucci because most of their bodies are 6K anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say for Gecko, I would just say you really want to hold the White Snakes toward the end of the game. But in terms of the early game and how you build board and like what you have to play around, it's similar, a little bit similar to RP Law, where something's getting popped a turn. It's very unlikely that they're popping 2 cards a turn unless they have a 4-cost Lucci. But in that instance, I mean, there's nothing you can do. You force them to have it.
Yeah.
And if they do invest the 4 Dawn to play a Lucci to get rid of a blocker and a Kaya or like a Searcher Kaya, then I think you're happy with that because that means they're not doing anything else for the rest of their turn. I do think things get harder if they end up with the Brook on the field. I think Brook really makes that deck have a better chance against Nami.
You talking about 3 cost or 6 cost Brook?
3. I think 6 costs is like they get, like I said, they get to put 3 cards back in your deck, but you get to choose. And I think at the end of the day,
I don't see relevant. Moria wouldn't be playing 6 cost Brook. It would probably be Lucci, and even still, it'd be quite a deck building decision to like play 4 of them. But yeah. But
I do think 3 cost Book is what makes the matchups a little bit harder.
Yeah. Having that trigger on attack as well is so dumb. But yeah. Anyway, go on.
I will say that Isho being a card in Lucci is something that you do play differently for. Because I think against Gecko, you're okay with playing with a low hand size, mainly because you're playing like around Perona, kind of. But against Lucci, I think you're okay if they Isho you. I think you want them to, for the most part. I think if they do that instead of a Gecko or playing a Sabo to like get rid of your board, I think you're really, really happy, especially if you like get to build board that turn. So I guess that's like something you can think about. Like if they're going into their 8 on 9 on turn, that's like probably the turn where you want to like peel off, or play your blockers, play your whole hand, tap out. Because if they do, then I think I'm okay with losing 2 cards to advance my game state and making sure that they're like you're not getting attacked. Or I mean, even if they on that turn, they usually only have 1 or 2 bodies, and if you take 2 damage that turn, because they're swinging like 7/7 or just like 1 big attack, then you're content with that. That means you're getting one of the 2 cards that they discarded back, and it doesn't really matter. So
fair enough.
That's something I think you need to keep in mind when you're playing against Lucci.
Yeah, and it's really just keeping track about like I think Black really highlights one of those concepts you were talking about earlier about like really understanding what they can play against you. Like Black has a lot of options. I think it's probably one of those decks like Colors that gets criticized for it. It feels like it can like it has a lot of similar effects, and it has a lot of powerful cards that do a lot of powerful things. So like there's a lot of things that they can do to you, like 4/4, 4/5, like just a ton. So that's one of those matchups where I really recommend, like outside of blue, outside of yellow, I really tell a lot of Nami players like just run through some simulations of like Gecko and Lucci, just play it yourself and see what they want to do on their 4 Dawn turn, on their 5 Dawn turn, on their 6 Dawn, like whatever it might be, on the draw, on the play, whatever it might be. I find like that was one of the holes in my game. Like I underestimate Black like a lot, because a lot of the other colors like just can't present like anything ridiculous to you. But Black really, like I feel like every turn I play against Black, like it's something different. Like I expect a Perona, they play an Absalom, and I'm like, oh, fine, all right, I guess I'll have to work with that. But yeah. How do you feel about, I think the last matchup I want to talk about is, especially with the increase in popularity of Nami, is the mirror match. What is it? Is the mirror match just solitaire? Because we're not playing Zeph anymore. There isn't that thing of like, oh, the opponent played 2 Zephs, I lose. Because what are you supposed to do? You can't afford to play anything. You have to sit there and like watch them, threaten these Zephs at you. How does mirror even play right now?
I would say the mirror is a lot worse now. I guess that's the only time I think Obvious is going to be the better inclusion in these decks.
Four Apis is the mirror breaker.
I think it really was before, especially when you find it helps you find Zeph.
Yes.
Or I mean even just Zeph Pilaf. Zeph Pilaf Kaya, all your important cards. So I think that's the only time that card will really, really shine in this metagame. But yeah, you really just have to hope you win the dice roll so you can decide what to do, and then that you open up more searchers than they do. More searchers, more Kayas.
No, it's just who sees their cards first. It's a little unfortunate. It's either you play Apis or I don't know, look up to the RNG gods and hope for the best.
I guess if you do make any changes to my deck and you really want to play for the mirror, then you cut the 2 Das Bones for 2 Apis, and you really hope it gets you there.
You got 8 players at your LGS and 4 of them are on Nami. Just run the Apis. Run the Apis.
Slap them in.
Honestly, you got 8 players at your LGS and 4 of them are Nami. Just run Gion. At that point, just run Gion. Play Gion. Play Pudding. Play Apis. Just tell them to stop. Essentially, convince all of these players to stop playing the game. Apis, Gion, and Pudding. Play them all. Pudding is the real troll move, by the way. Forget Gion. Pudding is the real troll move. Because you tend to get really high hand sizes now with this Kuja Apis list. But is there any other specific matchup that you felt like you wanted to highlight or that was super relevant? Let me know.
I think it was just in terms of blue against Dofi and Boa. Don't forget about Pudding. You can't forget about Pudding, and you also always have to account for Gravity Blade in those decks, and I guess it's cost Boa. So I think you treat them the same as Lucci, maybe a little bit different, because that their max removal in a turn is 2. So maybe you think about a turn where you're going to play 3 bodies down, or if you want to force in a Gravity Blade on one turn, then you'll put 2 high value, you put 2 Kai's down, and then the next turn you'll put 2 other bodies down. And I doubt they'll Gravity Blade again on like the medium, like the searcher blocker. But if they do, that's okay. I think any if they're wasting 7 Dawn 2 turns in a row to just put 4 cards back in your deck that are high value, then you're content with that.
Countering out is going to be miles easier. Yeah, exactly.
But just think about don't forget about Pudding, and against green, I guess I would say value your 5 and 4 life, value your 3rd life like pretty highly. I think that's actually the case for most matchups. You're okay with taking the first 2, but you really want to make them work for the 3rd life, just so that it makes these late game turns where maybe you want to consider tapping out by playing blockers or searchers, or just making sure that you're getting the most out of your playable bodies. That you have this extra life to play with, and it really matters at the end of the game when now you have 2 blockers, 2 life, 3 blockers, 2 life, or even 3 blockers, 1 life, and because you protected this early game life, it makes their math a lot harder, and it makes them play a lot more inefficiently because now they have to worry about your blockers and how you counter. So don't take damage for fun. Don't just if you can play around, I guess in green it's Hody. Keep in mind what those turns are looking like. Is their 7 on turn going to be just Hody, and then, or if they have a board, how much do you want to counter? And if you feel like you're not going to counter a lot, then tap out on that turn. Make their Hody have no value. And if you think that they're not going to play Hody, then just make sure you keep enough Dawn open. That's just a few words of advice.
No, I think that's really good information, especially around green. I think a lot of people get too, and I say this like as someone who does this too, they get a little too trigger happy with like peel-offs. I think you were raising up a good point when we were going over card selection just around Dawn management. And just because you can draw to that turn doesn't mean you should draw to that turn, because it ties into some of the other things you're talking about in terms of what they can play into you, what you're working with next turn. Like is like, you know, on your 4 Dawn turn, if you play peel off on 3, you're left with 1 Dawn. Is holding up Gavel enough, or are you letting them take a hit for free? Like, are you letting them do that for free, where you could have just held up another counter and not played the peel off and saved it for next turn? So it's like kind of small things like this. And I think like green really does teach you to do that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever it might be. If you're from a learning perspective, fortunately, if you're just eating free hits in a tournament, I don't know, better luck next time, I guess. But yeah. All right. So let's head into this final section here. I don't want to take too long here. And we're going to talk about some One Piece in general, especially someone who's had a lot of other TCG experience. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts here. But let's start off simple. What are some of the other decks that you're playing outside of Nami, you have played, you're looking forward to playing, heck, in OP08 or 9? Let me know.
I actually don't think too far ahead. I'll look at some of the spoilers for like the following set, but I really don't know anything about OP09. So I know like RP Law is definitely like tier 0 for OP08. It's not why I have like RP Law as a backup deck now. I genuinely just like playing more like fast decks. Like I played starter deck Luffy during set 1 and set 2, and even in between like the OP3 OP4 format, I played I still played starter Luffy. I did play Red Green Law for a bit, but I did ultimately take Nami to bigger events. But yeah, for the most part, right now, I like RP Law. I think it fits my play style.
Right.
And yeah, that's. I'm sorry. What else did you ask about that?
No, yeah, it was pretty much just like, what else are you playing, and if you were looking forward to anything in the future. But as you mentioned, you're not kind of looking too far ahead, so that's perfectly fine. A little bit of RP Law, a little bit of Star Deck Luffy early on. In that case, I guess like my next question, maybe not too general. I was gonna ask like, what are you really excited and looking forward to in One Piece in the future? If it's not leaders or decks to play for, are you excited for maybe the reprint sets? Are you excited for maybe some of the things Bandai's doing? What are you looking forward to in the game moving forward?
Oh, I really like how they're pushing more events to locals. Like the store, starting with the store regionals, and then we're getting store treasure cups.
Yeah.
I was a little confused about how this double national thing is working out, but I'm actually kind of glad that they spread it out in that way. So more events is always good. More reasons to get out. I think they're picking better locations. So any chance that I get to play in person and them making it more accessible, just for our local communities and stuff, it's good to see. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I'm hoping they bring back 3v3s again. I thought that was really fun during the first year.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything for season like this season.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping they bring it back and do something cool for it. So I love being able to play with my friends. And those are some things that we always look forward to, especially when we have like just like local 3v3s.
Yeah. And I think accessibility is probably that's the one I'm always a big fan of. One of the things I don't harp on too much anymore, because I think I kind of wrung the towel dry on it, but I always will, is a proper digital client. I think a lot of people have, arguments about, oh, you got to rebuy your cards, and it's not as the same as in person. But I think what this does is, I think Bandai would rather make a digital client than actually fix the real pricing problems that we have. I think they are making a reprint set that will do something, but I think staples are really expensive, and I don't think power creeping staples is the point. I think reprinting them or giving room for other options to exist is probably better, giving support to other options instead of just having 5-cost queen being the de facto 5-drop in purple. That's not great game design. So I think increasing accessibility both in price is very important. Like allowing more ways and places to play, definitely a great option. I'm always going to be behind that, giving LGSs more options to in terms of support for pricing. One thing that I do want to touch on in the next topic is, you brought it up early, was pricing support. I think One Piece does it in a very interesting way, and I definitely would like to see this in Magic at least. But But again, pricing I think is a still big criticism I have in this game. And I think the sim is a good step forward, but I think a actual backed client where you could hold online tournaments would be a great step forward, because we've seen the amount of cheating that happens in webcam tournaments. I think
that is the one downside I think this game has, is the amount of online cheaters. It's actually just absurd, like how many there are. And I mean, I'm glad they're being caught. It's unfortunate there's like not real punishment, but I mean, it's the fact that it's so widely known is it's wild.
I think what it like contributes to it from my perspective, and it could be controversial to say, I don't even blame them, in the sense that when the pricing structure, which I'm actually praising, is, you know, you get these lottery tickets essentially. Heck, I get top 8, I get like a $2,000 lottery ticket, essentially an alt art card that is worth an exuberant amount of money. You know, I'm not winning store credit. I'm not winning $500. I'm not going to a 5K and winning whatever amount of prizing. I'm winning a card that is worth X amount of money. Of course, like as an average, like layman player who has no stake in the game, of course I'm going to go cheat, because my potential is to win a card that's worth like $5, $10, $25,000. Right? That's worth cheating. What am I going to do? I'm not going to get arrested. I'm just going to get banned from One Piece. Okay, I want a $25,000 lottery ticket. I think it's like the way, like, I think the pricing is good, but the way we're implementing it is pretty bad. And I think that's where all the cheaters come from. It's really unfortunate, but I think it's what Bandai is fostering in terms of the ways of play. And that's what's going to happen, I think, if as long as webcams continue. Like, you could institute rules to have webcams underneath people's tables, webcams in their shirts, so people aren't reaching through and giving them cards. Like, you can do all you want, but cheater's a cheater, right? Like, there's I don't know about Yu-Gi-Oh, but especially in Magic, there's multiple examples of people cheating in paper on coverage. Right? Like with people there, right? Like, there's examples of doing that. Like, if people want to cheat, they'll cheat. It's a lot easier to stop it if you actually implemented things to do so. But I don't know. Anyway.
Or, I mean, actually ban people actually had repercussions. I think there's only been like one.
It'd be a nice place to start, right? Like, it'd be a nice place to start, but we'll
find out.
It's like we can't do the simple things. So I'm out here trying to promote complicated things. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. How do you feel about, you know, like some of the things that you would add or remove from the game? You know, I was kind of talking about my own personal opinions about like support, like pricing support and the way it's played. You know, in terms of design, what do you feel like are some of the good and bad things? You know, people talk about triggers and yellow just having like insane triggers, or you know, purple and black Maria. I just did an interview with someone else, and I posted it yesterday, and we went on a whole 15-minute rant about Black Maria, one of the most poorly designed cards I've ever seen in any card game. What do you think are some good and bad design choices in this game?
I think the good choice is always going to be the Dawn. It's going to start from the Dawn, and how just from that perspective, and how it builds and like just influences the game, and the uniqueness it gives in terms of power or what you're playing in a certain turn. And overall, I do like the identity for most decks. I think yellow having triggers is fine. I think it is gonna get to a point where maybe the Enel leader needs to be revisited in terms of if it needs to be banned or not, because at a certain point it might just become a good stuff deck. You're gonna put every good yellow card. Doesn't matter if it has like, there's going to be no synergies. There's hardly any synergies in the deck now, but if they just keep putting really good yellow cards, they're just going to put a bunch of good yellow cards, and they're all going to give it life. So I think that could be a problem in the future. In the current metagame, I think even in the past format, I think A-Class Moria is a problem. I don't think that card is very well balanced at all.
Seems to be a community sentiment right now,
Yeah, so I really hope that that gets visited. If it goes to 1 or gets banned, I think that's okay. I would be really disheartened if it doesn't see any changes. In terms of other things that I think might need to be addressed,
well,
I guess it's more.
Sorry, I was going to say, alongside what you were kind of talking about, like restricting and banning and everything, one thing I say, like I've said this before, I think one of the worst things this game can do, I think in terms of design perspective, and they already did it. They did it twice. Banning leaders. I think okay, so you ban Whitebeard. I get it. There was a need for it. I think all that says, though, is that you're making, like, you don't know how to design cards. I think banning leaders is kind of telling on yourself as designers. Are like completely errataing Sakazuki, like, actually shattered my faith in this game, because now that means that none of my game pieces are safe. The fundamental game pieces that make this game function can be changed at any point. And he kind of showed me, like, I feel like I'm kind of just playing paper Hearthstone, that like after one set, my literal identity in this game can just shift. Like one day they could just reprint better Kabaji, and it doesn't matter that Kabaji's banned. They'll just print better Kabaji, and their solution is let's errata Nami. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think they've done a couple of things with the leaders that I'm not really a fan of. I think they could have just done other things. Like they could have just banned certain cards and kept the leader, and then just leader locked abilities. Like they literally print cards that say, if your leader is X, do this. Or they could say things like, if your leader isn't this, do this. Like there's so many different ways to template cards. I don't know why we're errating leaders. Like it feels like such a slap in the face. I don't know. Like, yeah, I
can get behind that. I also don't like erratas in games. I think it should just be a ban. Like, because at some point you want to be able to consider to bring back a card, but now when you errata it, there's no way. Like this new Sokka is unplayable. It's like, might as well just ban it. That's the thing.
I've never played a single TCG where the errata was actually like the errata actually made the game playable, like card playable. Like it wasn't like. I don't know. And you just keep going. Sorry, I cut you off, but like I needed to throw in my thing about leaders in there. Bandai has a lot of problems when it comes to design.
Yeah, I think that's something I hope they don't do in One Piece, considering other bad choices that they made in Dragon Ball. They like, I think something that made Dragon Ball unfun was that they made like these silver bullet cards, like literally no interaction. They're just like cards that you put in your deck, and it says, "Oh, when you play this card for the rest of the game, your opponent can't do this." And it's just like, okay, that's the answer. Like, why? Like, that's so lazy. And I hope
that's kind of my fear with that's kind of my fear with Blackbeard. That's like, I think Blackbeard's design is powerful, and it's like, okay, yeah, like, you know, if you watch Blackbeard in the anime, like, oh, you get your little power fantasy. But that's a crap excuse because they keep printing bad Shanks cards. Shanks is one of the most powerful characters in this game, and in the film, Shanks is garbage. New Shanks, like that just feels like a starter deck leader. I'm not gonna lie, like it's actually playable, but like, let me see the support. Cards like Blackbeard, it kind of thinking about what you're talking about with silver bullet cards that do these uniform things. Like I think Blackbeard, OP09 Blackbeard, just completely shutting off on plays for that. They're going to make the leader busted. There's no way that leader doesn't get good support and good activate mains. And I know, I want to believe in Bandai, but they're not going to do it. Those activate mains are not going to be balanced properly. And all of a sudden, it's not going to be Blackbeard that's the problem. Those activate mains are just going to turn into Sabos, where Sabos is good in every black deck. They're just, well, except for Blackbeard now, But, you know, it's just going to go in everything. So going on that topic of lazy design.
Be careful.
Yeah,
they have to be careful there, and like hopefully they will continue, or like they'll implement like the leader lock trait. Yeah. So
like a bit more, or like the leader type, or something. Like I don't know. Anyway, like something to help along those lines. And I'm hoping that it doesn't reach those type of things. Like I don't have many experiences with these other card games. Like my card games have been. I played Yu-Gi-Oh when I was younger. Obviously haven't kept up to it. Yu-Gi-Oh now is just this. Yu-Gi-Oh is like a meme that other people talk about. Like we literally have like magic cards that get banned, and there's one card that got banned that literally like people's joke is that it was templated like a Yu-Gi-Oh card. It was good that it was banned. Like that's the joke. That's my perception of Yu-Gi-Oh. I played Lorcana and I played One Piece. That's my experience. So I'm happy to hear that other card games have examples that we don't need to follow. We don't need to kind of mess with that. And Digimon recently, I believe they did this thing where it was like a restriction, but it's like a restriction in a certain deck or something. Or like it was like a pair ban. Like if you play this card, you can only play one of this card.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like the only other game I know that has done something like that is Weiss, and
okay. Yeah.
I always thought it was curious. I always was curious to see if other games could do something like that. I would honestly wouldn't mind if they did something like that for One Piece. Like, your leader is this, you can't play this card. That are like, if you play this card, yeah, you can't play this other card. And I think it makes deck. It does make the deck building. I always like when there's deck building choices, like more deck building choices, and I would love to see something like that.
Yeah. I think like really all it hurts is the casual. I think it's very confusing for people to be like, you know, come onto the game and they're like, I'm playing this card, first day at locals, and then someone's like, oh no, you can't play that. I think like that's like probably the big reason I think people would have against it. Like it's good to implement, but like it's really bad for the casual. It's really bad for the casual, and that's the key. In order for any game to grow, you need the casuals onboarded, right? Like you need. And that's why pricing is important, all that stuff. Like, as much as you want to make your enfranchised players happy, the only way the game grows is if you keep the casuals happy. How would you compare this? And we're already having this conversation here. How would you compare your general enjoyment or your perception of the state of the game versus some of the other TCGs you play? Obviously, you know, you have a big love for Yu-Gi-Oh! You were mentioning, so you might perceive Yu-Gi-Oh! To be, you know, kind of have a bigger long-term direction. But do you feel like One Piece is kind of like it's kind of starting to have these red flags where you feel like it's going in a bad direction, or do you feel like it still has some promise? It hasn't made those mistakes that you were saying something like Dragon Ball has. What's your take on that?
Honestly, I think the only mistake One Piece has had so far is how long they let Whitebeard and I guess the red cards stay like dominant during the OPO3 up until like OPO like right before OPO5 came out.
Yeah, two metas.
Yeah, that was way too long. I think that was the only thing, and that did bring a lot of strife to a lot of my friends and just a lot of players in general that I know. But other than that, I feel like they've done a great job. I really hope that this next, I guess if we do get an upcoming ban list, that it doesn't take as long. And I think the game is in a really healthy spot. Honestly, like this past month, I've seen just so many locals have like their attendance come back. I think even just like last week, on the same day, there was like a 30-person local, and then like midway into the day, there was a 64-man case tournament, and then even after that, there was almost another 40-person local going on at the same time as that case tournament.
Hey, yo, let me move to this LGS. Let me move to this scene. What? That sounds lit.
If you come to California, if you come to California, like our locals our attendance numbers are crazy up. I think that's a great sign for the game. I think the set is like good. You see the diverse leaders, and I think that contributes to Nami's success as well.
Yep.
I think overall, as long as they don't take too long, I think with adjusting to RP Law in 08, I think the game should be in a really good spot.
Yep. Yeah, so let's see what I think August 12th or something like that. I don't know. That's the next BNR, I think. So I don't know. I call it a BNR, banned and restricted. That's from Magic. Just the next ban announcement. The next ban announcement, I believe, is August. So the last question I want to ask you, I think is a big one, and then we can address maybe some other points if you wanted to kind of weave them in. But the last point I wanted to ask you is Nami. Nami is fundamentally the most unique deck in this game by a mile, because it's the only one that presents a different win condition. How do you feel about Nami in terms of its health in the game? Do you feel like we should be adding more alternate win conditions? One of the examples I've had, and I don't know how it's going to be implemented, but maybe something like an Exodia where you have to have, maybe not in your hand, but you have to play 5 specific cards, pay 10 Dawn, you win the game. Right? Like maybe something like that, right? Like another alt win condition. Do you feel like these type of things are good for One Piece? And just your thoughts on Nami in general as a win con.
I'll talk about the idea in general first. I think these alternate win conditions are good for games. I think the fact that they present a anti-control aspect is what's important. and like it helps them from, or helps game designers from, like, hopefully not like having to print these silver bullets to like counteract a certain matchup. I think every type of deck should have like a counter. There should be a counter to an aggro deck. There should be a counter to a mid-range deck, and there should be a counter to a control deck.
You let the archetypes kind of you let the archetypes kind of balance the metagame instead of having like one card that just says buy control decks. Like you know, you just if your leader's red, you don't lose life. Like you know, something egregious like that or something. But yeah.
Yeah, so I like these ideas. I thought something cool that could happen would be like, what if they make like an Exodia version of Buggy? You know, since I mean that's kind of like lore centric. Yeah, that could be cool. Honestly, don't know what other conditions they can make, but that would be cool if they did something with Buggy. But yeah, I hope they do introduce other alternate win conditions. I think just adds more variety to the game, and having more options to counter control decks, and I guess what you would call a more control heavy meta, which is I think our current meta. Yeah. Like giving players options so that they don't have to, like, if they don't want to play a super grindy game, then now you have an option to counter that. And I mean, and there's a counter to the Nami right now, which is RP Law. So yeah, I do like having as you said, these archetypes counter each other. But coming back to Nami as I don't think it's a problem currently. It definitely doesn't have the numbers to represent that. Like, it's still very niche. I think it's a very hard. Yeah, I think it is a hard deck to pilot. It's like the deck. Even though people say it's like solitaire, it takes a lot of. You have to plan a lot. You have to play it correctly. It's a deck that rewards playing well. Yeah. But even as you said earlier, sometimes you can play it as well as possible. But sometimes it's not even how well you drew, how well you triggered. Sometimes it does count to it comes down to if the other player really knows the Nami matchup and knows how to like choke hold your Dawn and like make you play awkwardly. So there is a lot of intricacies in the matchups. People really need to learn it. I think it's important to learn. So I would say now I think it's fine. In terms of longevity in the game, I could see the leader being banned at some point, just because it limits card design. Yeah. And at a certain point, it could, like how I was talking about Enel, it could just become a good blue stuff deck. And so, I wouldn't be mad. I could totally understand it. I would just hope that in that time frame, or even before that time comes, that there is another alternate win condition introduced, just so that there is this variety in decks, and that the theme is still there, or still a choice in the game. Those are just how I feel about it right now.
Yeah, and I think just kind of bouncing off some of that, like, I would hope that if Nami does get banned, I think, like, okay, let's say come OPO10, they printed for 1 Dawn, if your leader is Nami, you draw 4 cards. I'm just being ridiculous on purpose here, but you know, if they were to purposely, you know, ban Nami, right? I like at that point in the game, I would probably honestly, if they didn't present another alt win con, I'd probably just stop playing the game. I think because of some of the things you said, like it kind of just telling me that Bandai doesn't care to design the game, and they've kind of just given up. I would hope that if they ban Nami, also that there's another format. I would hope, like, I think ways to play are very important. I think at some point, if the game is to go on long term, at some point the game is going to become generally inaccessible for the newer player, because you're going to have these cards that Bandai is not going to print properly, are going to be really expensive. And I would hope that maybe there's like a different format where that maybe allows all cards, and then like a new format where you print in older leaders that you want, and only has like more recent cards or something. Like I would hope there, like, and then all you do is you ban Nami in the recent format and you keep it for the old or something. I think like I agree. Alt ways to win are very important, and coming from a game like Magic where you have, I mean, the game is insane, the game is big, there are more than 10 plus formats, 5 to 6 plus of them are tournament legal and can be played in a national tournament level and everything. So there's so many ways to play, interact with the game in a constructed and a casual fashion. Choices are key. But I think like options are like ways to play as well. Like in Magic, I can go into any format in Magic. I can pick a combo deck. I can pick a control deck. I can pick an aggro deck. And depending on what it is, it could be powerful. It could not be, but I can still pick one and relatively succeed. Like that's what I want for One Piece. I want to be able to go into this game and give a casual this game and say, you can play this general archetype and succeed. Right now, there's no combo deck. There's all win con. I wouldn't consider Nami a combo deck in the traditional sense. Combo decks to me are cards coming together that have synergies that allow you to win the game. Nami is just like, it's a defensive deck. In my mind, it's a mid-range, it's a control deck. Like it's not a combo deck. In the traditional sense, especially you as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you could tell me this ain't no combo deck. Yeah. This is far from that. Like, you know.
Yeah, I think the closest thing this game has had to a combo deck was probably Red Green Law.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, because like if you have 5 characters out, you can start kind of playing other things out. So, okay, I was thinking like, no, I guess Vegapunk really isn't. Vegapunk was just like an interesting take on like a yellow leader, but I guess not combo necessarily. Okay. Fair enough. But I agree. I think I largely agree. I would be very upset if the solution was ban Nami. Oh, so this is what I was going to say. I have a counterpoint. So what you said about limiting blue design, I believe it doesn't, because I think that's just a lack of good design from Bandai. I think that's just a lack of good design from Bandai. I'm gonna be completely honest. And this comes from, again, like you coming from Yu-Gi-Oh, seeing the way certain cards are designed for different archetypes, me coming from Magic, seeing the way Mill is designed in that game. My primary channel with Magic is all about Mill. I've been playing Mill for 10 years. This archetype has been balanced, rebalanced. Mill exists in every single format. Whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter, it exists. And whether it's self-mill, whether it's milling your opponent, it exists, which means you can balance it. If you can balance it in other TCGs, you can balance it in this one. Nami does not need to be banned. You just need to design better. And is that me telling Bandai designers to do their job better? It is. Mm-hmm. I'm a consumer of the game, though. I can say what I want. I'm the one, you know, like I'm a consumer of the game. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to design it. But as someone who's paying my money to play the game, I can tell you to do your job better. But, you know, I don't need other people to agree. That's just my take. But yeah, that's my little long-winded rant about it. Is there any final statement you wanted to make or kind of topic you wanted to cover, whether it be we forgot about this matchup or you want to talk about this card or just kind of some thoughts you might have? Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I think I talked about all the matchups that I wanted to. I think I'm happy with what I've said.
In this kind of final statement here, talk to us about where can we look for you in the future going with Nami? Are you going to generally be sticking with it in 07? Are you going to a lot of tournaments now? Like are we going to see you in first place in a couple more tournaments coming up? What's going on with Nami?
I think at least the rest of this month is a little bit slow. It's like the store regional season. But yeah, beginning of August is really jam packed. There's like the whole Gen Con.
Yeah.
Like 3 events or like there's 6 events that whole weekend. Into like the other competitive regionals leading up to nationals. I think I will consider playing the deck, or I'm definitely still testing it. I'm still playing. I still feel like there's things to learn about other matchups that I haven't completely solidified yet. But overall, I feel great about the deck and where it is in the meta. It just depends on if RP Law somehow like takes a really big shift and becomes like the dominant presence in the meta game. That's like the only really thing that would make me like hop off the deck. But I'm definitely I wouldn't be surprised to keep playing it. At least these like the beginning of the regional season once it starts up again in August.
How do you feel? Okay, I gotta ask because you mentioned RP Law again. How do you feel about Black Maria? Real quick, 1 minute. You got 1 minute to give me your thoughts about Black Maria.
Man, that card is just absurd. That card, I don't know what they were thinking. Like a 5 free Dawn for no reason. Like I think they, and it's a 2K, and yeah, that card just doesn't read correctly. I don't know what they were thinking with it. I guess maybe that was their way to say we want RP Log on, but there's it feels like they didn't even think about the leader. They just totally forgot he existed for whatever reason.
Like I think Black Mario was like Bandai just saying, oh wait, we have purple players. Right. Sorry. There's actual purple players in this game. Sorry, yeah. Here, play this. It's all those damn purple Luffy players, those purple Kaido players are like, oh, what about me? well, what about me? You know, like all, you know, they're seeing Katakuri, Sakazuki winning everywhere. They're like, well, me, please, me. And then they gave him Black Maria and absolutely destroyed the game. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, I don't even think that's what purple needed. Like, it's what the RP Law needed, but not the color in general.
Mean, purple needed support. And Bandai said, here's support. You know, like that's what they said. Give me, as we close off here, give me your final statements on Nami and OPO7.
I think it's a great meta call. If you're having any ideas about playing the deck, I would recommend it. And yeah, it really helps to understand the other decks in the meta, because you, like I said earlier, you really have to understand each matchup, understand the goals of every deck. So even if you don't like playing Nami, I think it's a great way to get a good eyes on everything else in the meta, and maybe you'll find something else you really enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to just try something different, I would recommend it. It's not a bad call.
I couldn't agree more. But at the end of all this, Adam, I appreciate you joining me on this interview here. I really hope that I get the chance to do this again, that this becomes a regular thing, that you are continuing to win with Nami. And even if it is without Nami, even if it is, you know, kind of on other channels, you're talking about other deck lists. And again, I hope you come back to Nami and continue with it. Thank you for joining me on this interview. As always, I always like to say in every couple of videos that I am no Nami pro. I'm just a content creator. I'm just someone that plays hundreds of games of Nami. The good players are folks like Adam that can get out there, that can test, that can play it well. I just play a lot of Nami, so I have my opinions. I guess I primarily only really play Nami outside of maybe Dofi or a little bit of other blue, but the real good players are people like Adam. So, you know, your socials are going to be listed down below. If you have any thoughts, like real good questions, you point them to Adam. Okay, you can hate my opinion, but Adam is the one who these are people that got real valuable opinions because they're winning. That's the key, and that's what I want to platform here. Thank you, Adam, for joining me on the channel here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for the praise. Yeah, I hope to be back sometime. And if the deck continue, if you see the deck continuing to do well, then please learn the matchup. Yeah, don't ban the leader because you don't know how to play against it, but like learn the matchup.
Notice how I have not asked a single question about how to beat Nami. That's for all y'all to figure out. I will not be making videos about how to beat Nami. Do not come to this channel for that, because some of y'all really suck at playing the Nami matchup and you get mad at it. That's your fault. You're telling on yourself. I ain't teaching you how to play the Nami matchup better. You learn yourself. But yeah, thank you everyone. Leave a like on the video as always. I got to do my little YouTube shill. Comment down below what your thoughts are on everything. Let me know. You playing Apis or not? You playing Mr. One or you're not? Or are you still forcing Zeph for some god-awful reason in OPO7? Let me know. In a world of Gordon and RP Law, you're forcing Zeph? Be for real. Be real with me right now. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining me for this call. Adam, thank you for joining me. We're going to call it right here.